The air in our little apartment was thick with happiness. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling, and the sound of my daughter Lily's laughter mixed with her friends as they buzzed around the cake. This was her 7th birthday party, a small, perfect world I had built just for her, a world that was safe and warm. Then, the doorbell rang. It was a courier, holding a single, perfectly wrapped box. I saw the familiar looping handwriting on the tag, my mother's, and my stomach did that familiar little flip. That tiny knot of hope and dread I knew so well. Lily tore into the wrapping paper with all the enthusiasm a 7-year-old can muster. Her eyes went wide when she saw it. Inside was a beautiful, soft pink dress. She let out a gasp of pure joy and hugged it tightly to her chest, the fabric bunching up in her little fists. For a brief, stupid moment, I let myself believe. I saw her beaming face and thought, maybe this time. Maybe this time they really saw her, my wonderful girl. She deserved to be seen. She held the dress up against herself, spinning in a little circle. Her smile was radiant. And then it wasn't. It just faded. She went completely still, her head tilted. She looked down at the collar, her brow furrowed in confusion, and her voice was so small when she whispered, "Mommy, what is this?" I leaned in, thinking it was just a loose thread, maybe a tag scratching her. But it wasn't a tag. There, stitched onto the delicate fabric in a shimmering silver thread, was a perfect, ornate letter, C. My heart didn't sink. It started to pound with a cold, sickening dread. C, not for Lily. C for my niece, Chloe, my brother's daughter. The truth hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a thoughtful gift bought for my child. It was a hand-me-down, a careless regift, a piece of someone else's life passed on to us as if it were good enough. We were the afterthought. We always were. And in that moment, watching the light dim in my own daughter's eyes, I didn't feel the urge to cry. I felt the click of a switch. The part of me that had spent a lifetime hoping for their approval had just turned to stone. To understand why a single letter on a dress felt like a declaration of war, you have to know about my family's two-tiered system. There's my brother, Brandon, the family's charismatic but reckless golden child who never faced a single consequence. He wore his charm like a shield, and it deflected everything: responsibility, accountability, reality. And then there are my parents. My mother, Susan, is a woman who mistakes her son's dependence for love and my independence for a lack of it. And my father, Robert, a man who has made a lifelong career out of agreeing with her to keep the peace. They were the architects of our family's great lie. I remember so clearly the day Brandon, at 22, announced he was quitting his stable job to become a photographer. He stood there in the living room, all dramatic sighs and artistic angst, and I braced myself for the lecture he was about to receive. The lecture I would have received. Instead, my parents lit up. My father clapped him on the back, telling him how brave he was to follow his passion. My mother, she clasped her hands together, her eyes shining with pride. "Oh, Brandon," she'd said, her voice full of awe. "You have such an artistic soul." They didn't just encourage him, they funded him. They dropped thousands on a top-of-the-line camera setup, lenses, and lighting equipment. It was an investment in his dream, they said. The crowning jewel of this investment was a month-long trip to Iceland to build his portfolio. My social media feed was flooded with pictures of him posing in front of glaciers and waterfalls, my mother's comments glowing beneath each one. Our brilliant boy. She'd write, capturing the world's beauty. He was living a life entirely subsidized by their belief in his specialness. He came back from that trip with exactly 3 blurry photos of a puffin, a story about how the light was uninspiring, and a massive credit card bill from Reykjavik bars. They paid it off without a word. It was just the cost of raising a genius, I suppose. It was another entry in an internal ledger I didn't even realize I was keeping. Just a year later, I got a major promotion at my job. It was a huge step for me, a validation of years of hard work, but there was a catch. To be fully confirmed in the role, I needed a professional certification. The course and the exam cost $800. I remember calling them, my voice buzzing with excitement, hoping they'd be proud, hoping they'd see this as a real, tangible investment. I explained the situation, and after a long pause, my mother's voice came through the phone, coded in that specific brand of gentle dismissal she reserved just for me. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," she said. "But you know, money is just so tight right now." Then came the line that always felt like a slap in the face disguised as a compliment. "But you're so smart and resourceful, we know you'll figure it out." And I did. I figured it out by picking up extra shifts for 3 straight months, coming home exhausted, my eyes burning from staring at a screen after a full day's work. I ate ramen noodles and canceled my internet to save money, all for an $800 course that would secure my career. His blurry puffin photos were worth thousands in their eyes. My actual future wasn't worth a second thought. He was a passion project I was just expected to function. That was the false narrative they built our lives on. It was a dictionary of excuses they wrote to make themselves feel better. I was the responsible one, which meant I could be neglected. I was so independent, which meant I could be ignored. I was the strong one, which was their permission slip to not help me carry my burdens. Brandon, on the other hand, was sensitive, which meant his feelings were more important than anyone else's. He was finding his path, which meant he was allowed to be reckless and irresponsible without consequence. He needed more support, which meant he was entitled to all the resources, financial and emotional, that the family had to offer. These weren't descriptions of who we were. They were job descriptions. I was the family shock absorber, and he was the family project. They poured everything into him, hoping he would one day shine, and they took everything from me, assuming I would just somehow regenerate. They mistook my resilience for a lack of need, and his helplessness for a sign of his great potential. Being the strong one doesn't mean you don't need help. It just means you're less likely to get it. Lying awake that night, with the pink dress folded on a chair like an indictment, I realized they would never see me. All those years of excuses and false praise, all the trips and second chances for him versus the tight budgets, and "you'll figure it out for me." It was all there, stitched into that little dress with the wrong initial. And worse, they were teaching my daughter that she was invisible too. They were handing down my role to her. So I decided it was time to change the narrative. For good. The next morning, my phone started buzzing just after 9. The first call was from my mother, her name flashing on the screen with a cheerful, oblivious brightness. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, a text popped up, just calling to see how Lily liked her dress. Hope she had a wonderful day. I didn't feel anger or sadness. The part of me that used to ache for that kind of attention was gone. The emotional reaction was over. The strategic phase had just begun. My focus wasn't on the dress anymore. It was on the one tangible thing that tied us together, the lake house. It was a beautiful property my grandparents had left in a trust, to be co-owned by me and Brandon, with my parents acting as the trustees. For years, it had been their biggest tool of control. They claimed the summer rental income was completely eaten up by taxes and exorbitant maintenance costs, so there was never, ever a profit to split. It was a financial black hole, they said, a burden they managed purely out of love for us. Of course, this burden didn't apply equally. Brandon and his family were given the house for free for the entire month of July, a generous gift for the golden child. When I asked for a single week in August, I was quoted a family rate to help cover the endless mysterious costs. I was paying to stay in a house I half-owned, while he was rewarded for simply existing. The unfairness of it had been a dull ache for years. Now, it was the key. I spent the entire day in a state of cold, quiet fury, every ounce of my energy channeled into my laptop. I pulled the public tax records, then found the house's listing on a vacation rental site, complete with a calendar of bookings and nightly rates. I hired a local property manager for an official market analysis. As I cross-referenced the real numbers with years of my father's emails full of vague excuses about unexpected repairs and rising fees, a clear picture emerged. This wasn't a case of poor management. This was fraud. My hands didn't even shake as I dialed the number for a real estate lawyer I found online. I explained the situation, my voice steady and clear. The goal was not a screaming match or a tearful confrontation. The goal was a legal petition to have my parents removed as trustees for gross financial mismanagement. The goal was to force a choice. Either they buy me out at the house's full, current market value, or the court would order it sold and the proceeds divided. By noon, I had a file full of proof. I had a lawyer on retainer. I had a plan. All that was left was to choose the right moment to burn their perfect, dishonest world to the ground. I chose not to do this over the phone and certainly not in person. An ambush at a family dinner would have given them the home field advantage, allowing them to twist it into a scene of my emotional instability. No, this had to be clinical. I scheduled a video call under the pretense of planning the summer schedule for the lake house. When their faces popped up on my screen, it was exactly as I'd pictured. My mother, Susan, was smiling her placid, condescending smile. My father, Robert, looked ready to deliver his annual lecture on property taxes. And my brother, Brandon, was slouched in his chair, looking profoundly bored and staring at his phone, already annoyed that he had to be there at all. I let them settle in, a predator's patience I never knew I possessed washing over me. I felt my heartbeat, a slow, steady drum against my ribs. "Thanks for joining," I began, my voice even and calm. "I wanted to talk about the lake house. I've been looking into the finances to get a clearer picture of things." I saw my mother's smile tighten just a fraction. My father cleared his throat, ready to launch into his script. But I didn't give him the chance. "I'm going to share my screen, just so we're all on the same page." The first document that filled the screen was the official county record of property taxes for the last 5 years. "Here are the official tax payments," I said, my cursor moving slowly over the numbers. "As you can see, they've been very consistent, even dropping slightly 2 years ago." I paused. Silence. Brandon didn't even look up from his phone. My father squinted, looking confused, as if he couldn't understand why I was showing him something so mundane. This wasn't part of the usual family drama. This was paperwork. "Now," I continued, clicking to the next file. "This is a market analysis from a local property management company, detailing the average rental income for a comparable property in that area, month by month, for the same 5-year period." The numbers on the screen were big, very big. I saw Brandon finally look up, a flicker of interest in his eyes. My mother's smile was gone now, replaced by a stiff, wary line. I could almost hear the gears turning in their heads, the story starting to fray at the edges. They still thought I was just confused, that I had misunderstood something. Then I brought up the final document. It was a simple spreadsheet I'd made myself. Column A showed the documented market income year by year. Column B showed the actual taxes and a generous estimate for maintenance. And column C, titled Profit, showed the final number, a staggering 6-figure sum that should have been sitting in the trust. "And this," I said, my voice dropping just a little, "is the money you told me never existed." That's when the dam broke. My father went first, leaning into his camera, his face turning a blotchy red. "Now wait just a minute," he stammered, trying to find his footing. There's context here. There were one-time expenses, things you wouldn't know about." His voice trailed off. The usual vague excuses sounded utterly pathetic when confronted with a spreadsheet. He had no facts, no figures, nothing. He just stared, speechless. A man whose authority had just been dismantled line by line. Then came my mother, right on cue. When facts failed, she switched to feelings. Her eyes welled up with performative tears. "I cannot believe you are doing this," she whispered, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. "After everything we've done for you, to be so cold, so transactional. We did our best for this family." I just watched her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. It was like watching a magician perform a trick you've already figured out. The illusion was gone. But it was Brandon's reaction that was the most telling. He shot forward in his chair, his face a mask of pure, selfish rage. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted, pointing a finger at his camera, at me. "You're going to ruin everything over some stupid numbers? It's a house. It's where my kids spend their summer." He didn't care that they had lied, that they had effectively stolen from me for years. He only cared that his free ride was about to be canceled. He had just confirmed everything I already knew. I let their chaos swirl for a moment, a storm in a teacup. Then I leaned forward and spoke, my voice cutting through their noise with the clean, sharp edge of truth. "The issue isn't the money," I said calmly, looking each of them in the eye. "The issue is the trust you've broken. My lawyer will be in touch with you tomorrow to discuss the terms of a buyout or a court-ordered partition sale. This conversation is over." And before any of them could respond, I moved my cursor and clicked the red End Meeting button. And in the ringing silence after I clicked End Meeting, I didn't feel anger or victory. I just felt quiet. For the first time, I was the one who got to walk away. The silence after that call was the calm in the eye of the hurricane. The storm hit within minutes. My phone began to vibrate so intensely it nearly danced off the table. A relentless barrage of calls from my mother, my father, and then Brandon. I didn't answer a single one. Voicemails started piling up, each one a chaotic blend of disbelief, rage, and theatrical weeping. I listened to the first 30 seconds of one from my mother, a rambling, tear-choked monologue about how I was tearing the family apart, before I deleted it. I calmly created a new rule in my email to forward any message from their accounts directly to my lawyer's office. When their direct assault failed, they deployed the flying monkeys. It started with my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, calling to tell me how heartbroken my parents were. She spoke of family loyalty and forgiveness, her voice dripping with disappointed sympathy. I let her finish her rehearsed speech, then replied with a calm, quiet, "I appreciate your concern, but this is a legal matter now, and I can't discuss it." The line went quiet for a moment before she sputtered a goodbye. The same conversation happened with a cousin, and then with an old family friend. Each of them sent to relay the same message: I was the aggressor. I was the one being cruel. Each time, I gave the same polite, impenetrable response. They were trying to drag me back into the emotional chaos where they held all the power, but I refused to enter the ring. My boundary was a brick wall they were not prepared for. The legal process was exactly as frustrating as you'd imagine. They fought, of course, not with facts. There were no facts on their side, but with delays. Their lawyers sent back lowball offers that were insulting on their face. They tried to claim sentimental value should reduce the buyout price. They attempted to drown my lawyer in pointless paperwork, all in an attempt to wear me down, to make the process so expensive and exhausting that I would just give up and accept a fraction of what I was owed. It was the same strategy they'd used my whole life: just make things difficult enough that the responsible one gives in for the sake of peace. But the peace they offered was a lie, and I wasn't buying it anymore. 6 months later, staring at the final legal document in front of them, they finally surrendered. Faced with a court date they knew they would lose spectacularly, they agreed to the buyout. Last week, the full amount, certified by the bank, cleared in my account. I stared at the number on my screen for a long time. It wasn't a thrilling victory. It didn't feel like winning the lottery. It felt like justice. It felt like the closing of a painful, decades-long accounting error. It was reparations for 1,000 slights, big and small. It was the price of my freedom. The first thing I bought was a house. It wasn't large or fancy, just a small 2-bedroom bungalow with a slightly overgrown backyard and a sturdy oak tree perfect for a swing. The day we got the keys, Lily ran through the empty rooms, her happy shrieks echoing off the walls. That first weekend, instead of unpacking, we built a swing set together. As I tightened the last bolt and watched her fly towards the sky, her face split by a grin of pure bliss, a profound sense of peace settled over me. We weren't just building a swing, we were building a foundation. We were creating our own joy, with our own 2 hands. Slowly, I started investing in myself in other ways too. I walked into an electronics store and bought the best laptop they had, the kind of powerful machine I needed for my freelance business, the kind I'd told myself for years I couldn't afford. I didn't agonize over the price. I just bought it. It felt like I was finally telling myself that my work, my ambitions, were worth investing in. I started a small vegetable garden in the backyard with Lily. We'd spend our evenings watering the tiny green shoots, our hands covered in dirt, and it felt more real and fulfilling than any holiday at that stupid lake house ever had. I did hear about them, of course. You always do. I heard through the grapevine that Brandon, deprived of his safety net, had to get a real 9-to-5 job. The word was he complained about it constantly. I also heard that my parents had crafted a heartbreaking story for anyone who would listen. A tragic tale about their ungrateful, money-hungry daughter who tore the family apart over a house. They were the victims, naturally. I was the cold-hearted villain. And hearing this, I felt nothing. A faint, distant pity, maybe. Their words were just noise from a radio station I no longer listened to. Their narrative had lost its power because its primary audience, me, had walked out of the theater. A few weeks ago, while unpacking the last of the boxes, I found it at the bottom of a bin. The little pink dress. I took it out and looked at the shimmering C on the collar. I felt no anger, no racing heart, no cold dread. It was just a piece of fabric. A relic from a different life. A life that belonged to someone else. I folded it neatly, placed it in a donation box with a pile of other things we no longer needed, and left it on the curb. I was finally letting it all go. I learned that sometimes the only way to find your place in the world is to leave the one you were assigned. If you've ever had to become your own hero, leave a comment below. I see you.